Hi,
So,
everybody. Good morning, and thank you for joining us for another very international version of Dojo Live. My name is Kim Lantis, and joining me here in Nearsoft's Hermosillo office is fellow Nearsoftian Carlos Ponce. Hey,
hello, morning.
Carlos. And of
Hey.
course, fellow Nearsoftian Luis Ortiz, a
Hey
member of
guys.
Nearsoft Labs. He's joining us from our Mexico City office. For those of you who might not know, Nearsoft Labs is an area of Nearsoft that basically focuses on building our own intellectual property, but it goes beyond that. It's focusing on training and helping our own growth hacking. And so we're really excited today to have
Oh, seems
he
like.
is joining us
Oh.
from a company called Oikosafi. I think I said that
Kim,
right.
sorry to interrupt you, Kim, but you
Yeah.
froze for 3 seconds,
Oh
please.
no. All right.
I'm
Where did you hear me? I
freeze.
was just saying hi, Vasco.
Hi.
We can start
Hi.
with the name.
Perfect. I
I
don't know
should be
where
freezing.
I
I'm in
left off.
Finland. It's freezing outside.
And no kidding. Come join us. It's like 75 degrees here.
Oh my God! Don't say that.
Uh, but Vasco, thank you, is joining us from a company called Oikosafi. Really fun company based out of Europe. So it's late in his day today. He's going to be walking us through the idea of 10 new principles for software development, though I don't think we have time for all 10 of them. But Vasco, please tell us a bit about yourself as the CEO and managing director of Oikosafi, what it is that you company do, and let's get started.
Yeah. So thank you very much for the introduction. Yeah. So we're based out of Europe, and we work with clients, normally mid-sized to large corporations that are adopting agile at the strategy level. So we're kind of helping companies become agile for the business side of the business rather than the software side of the business. So we do large scale agile and also agile portfolio management deployments over here in Europe. And we have some in South America, so quite near you. I mean, globally speaking,
Mhm.
in Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, and so on. So there's quite a lot of work happening internationally. So it is true what you said. It's a very global hangout today.
It really is. And Vasco, I understand you have yourself around 20 years of experience in software development, right? And you've kind of been at the forefront of Agile since about 2004. Is that right? So 13 years. And this is a really fun application. I'm interested to see how it can goes beyond just the software development into like more overarching real world applications as well. So before we get started, my first question on the 10 new principles, my question is, can you talk about that magical three-letter word new? What is important and why is new a big thing?
Yeah, so new is always a big thing, right? And the reason is not because it's new, but because it breaks some paradigms, it breaks some established thought patterns about software development. And these 10 principles are just some of the principles we apply when we apply no estimates. And no estimates, the hashtag no estimates, which reminds me that I should use my high-tech hashtag creator here. Let just a second while I create this so that you can see what that
Yes.
looks like. And
Vasco is a
by the
man after
way,
Carlos' own heart.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Can't wait what it is. Can't wait to see what it is.
So the high tech hashtag screen.
There you go.
So no
No
estimates.
estimates.
If you go to Twitter, search for no estimates, and by the way, take cover if you tweet about no estimates, because there's some people who hate the idea of getting rid of estimates. So no estimates is really challenging a lot of the paradigms that we had in software development. And we'll go through 3 of those in the presentation that we have ready for you today. But the basic idea is that we are getting back to what is the core value of software development? Like, why do we even use software in the first place, right? And then I'm not the only one saying this. There's a lot of people saying this, that software is a 10x technology, right? You use software for services, products, and applications that give you 10 times more return than you expect to invest in it. And why is that? Because software is an amplifier for any business model, right? If you have to do things manually, it's going to be slower, it's going to cost more, and it's going to have more errors. Some things have to be done manually, of course, but in order to scale, you need to use technologies like software. And software can easily, help you reach 100,000 times more clients than you could without software. I mean, let's talk about Google, lowly search engine created in a basement in California. That's now reaching, nearly 5 billion people all over the world. Facebook, a dormitory piece of software, which didn't work very well at the beginning. It was very, very limited to a certain audience. But then now it has, 2 billion active users or whatever it is. Like, it's ridiculous. Why? Because of software. So software is a new technology. It's a 10x technology, and therefore it requires a different approach. We don't build software like we build bridges. And because of that, we need new principles for developing software.
Very good. So why don't we get started? I understand you have some slides presentation to share with us. So if you'd like, let's share that screen of yours and tell us.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
Here we go.
There you go.
And there we go. So, wrong slide. That's the last slide. Don't start with the last slide. There we go. And now you all know my email, which is, of course, also the purpose. So this is a presentation that I've been taking, around the world to talk about this new approach to software development. And in this presentation, we actually have 10 new principles, but we are limited in time. So I'll try to keep this short and interactive. Therefore, we're going to cover only 3 principles. But you have the possibility, because you're here and you're listening to this Dojo Live, you can get the book for free. So if you go to the link that is at the bottom of the screen, you can sign up and get the book for free. The book is being sold at $7 for the lower version, which is just the book. But then if you want all the videos, there's up to 9 videos with No Estimates practitioners all over the world. Then, of course, there's more. A lot more to learn about No Estimates than what one book could deliver. So you have the opportunity to get access to that also. But if you just want to read the book and know what it is about, then you can get it at the link below. So one thing is...
Thank you very much. So you said for watching Dojo Live, you're offering a free book.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah,
wow.
you have
Folks.
24 hours to download, basically. So
how
if you
many,
go
I'm
there,
sorry?
24 hours.
All right, you heard that,
In the
folks.
next 24 hours, yeah.
Thank
Good.
you.
So
You need to tweet that, definitely.
yeah, don't make it secret. Only for Dojo Live viewers.
Okay.
Like, stop. All right, let's go.
All
Cool.
right. So
Thank you.
when we look at No Estimates, like No Estimates tries to tell us that we can manage software development without the use of expert estimation and be on time. Actually, that's the subtitle of the book, right? Always be on time without using estimates, how to measure progress without estimating. So there's this thing called soccer or football, as the rest of the world calls it. And in the European Championship a couple of years ago, or actually this summer, what happened was that a small upstart, Iceland, a small country, there's 200,000 people. They can barely get enough people to put a team together, right? And by the way, there's actually a Facebook post where they start eliminating, like, the prime minister can't play, and then there's the people who are serving in the army, and then the bus drivers, and and because it's a male team, of course, half of the population cannot play, and so on. And they start eliminating, and they basically get down to 11. So
Yes. I've heard about it. Like, there's people that don't play professionally on the team, right?
exactly. And
That's
think
like,
about
I'm
this.
from the state of Montana, and people are like, so what are your pro teams? I'm like, really? We have none. We go for whoever we want to go for, because there's nobody even in like a whole like 5-state radius of like professional teams.
And but the incredible thing is that the guy you see in the back there, the number 3 shirt with the hands in his head, is Pepe, one of the best central defenders in the world. And he just saw
I was going to ask
Gunnarsson,
you,
the guy
Luis,
that
do you know who it is?
No, hell no.
But
He's actually
my husband would have.
Yeah, he's in the starting lineup of Real Madrid. So it's like he's one of the best players in the world. And he's looking at Gunnarsson, number 8, which is doing the eagle thing there. And he just scored against Portugal, who ultimately ended up winning the championship. Now, here's the thing. None of these facts was estimated by the experts. Neither Iceland almost winning Portugal, nor Portugal winning France in the final and taking home the trophy. So actually, there's a lot of fields out there where no estimates is alive and kicking. But here's the thing. No one would bet their house on a football match.
I suppose
right?
no one estimated correctly the United States elections in 2016.
Whoa, don't get us started on that. Right? And there's a lot of areas where no estimates is perfectly okay. It's acceptable. And in the case of football, and if you like to bet, it's even a good thing, right? We are actually helping the entertainment by not being 100% predictable. So no estimates is not something that is bad, is that something that is alive and kicking elsewhere. So here's the thing. We have this 10, well, actually it's not 10, it's 3, because this presentation is shortened and improved. 3 principles of the 10 for no estimates and new principles for software development in general. But before I go further, let me just say this, because there's a lot of people going crazy about no estimates. Don't do this if you don't feel like this in an estimate meeting. Like, okay, what? Another estimate meeting? I'm so bored, right? A lot of people go through this. A lot of people hate that because a lot of the discussions around estimates are really around numbers, not around what is the work that we need to do. And of course, engineers and even stakeholders go like, why do we need to have this conversation? Also, if you feel that an estimate is like this, it's a booby trap. Also, no estimates is important for you and might be useful. But of course, if you love to handle bombs, you might have a good career in estimation. And that's perfectly fine, right? And finally, no estimates is for you if this is what you would like to see when you meet a customer, a happy person. Because the thing is that with no estimates, we are prioritizing the delivery of value over the accuracy of the estimates. Just like in the Agile Manifesto, we say, for example, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. In no estimates, we say delivering value over spending time estimating the project. Now, why is that important? Let me tell you a story. So this train here is the Shinkansen, which has an amazing on-time track record. In 2014, the average delay of the Shinkansen in the whole of Japan was 54 seconds. So that's less than a minute. But by the way, the 54 seconds includes natural catastrophes. Anything. How is that possible, you say? I don't know how the trains work in Mexico, but I can tell you that in most countries, So a lot of people laugh when I say that. No matter what country I'm in, people will start laughing if I say that immediately. And the reason is that we don't trust the trains to be on time. But in Japan, they are. And why are they on time? Because we've actually built, or they built, a trunk for this train. They actually looked at the crossings between traffic, normal car traffic and train lines, and they eliminated those. They also checked that actually animals crossing the line causes delay, so they've built a protection on the whole line so that no animals can come and cross the line, right? So they've built the whole network of rails for this train to be immune to the normal causes of delay in any train network. And this is really one of the key principles for us in software development. If you don't trust your process to deliver software on time, you should change the process. And I don't mean improve it. I mean, throw it away and build a process that is designed from the ground up to deliver software on time. Just like the Shinkansen rail system. It is designed from the ground up to deliver on time, to always be on time. And here's the thing, when you're in this train and you have an important meeting at your destination, you can be sure you will make the meeting on time. But in many places, you probably have to go a day before. And if you go a day before, you might not be as nervous. But if you go the same day, you might, really be nervous about meeting your client or your team on time. But thanks to the fact that this train is always on time, we can sit down in the train and literally enjoy the ride because we're not nervous about the result. And when was the last time that your software project felt like that? It felt like a comfortable ride that you knew was going to deliver on time no matter what.
So that's I have to treat that as a rhetorical question because I myself am not a developer. But it's a really good point.
So that what does that bring us to? Is that also no estimates is an improvement in the quality of life of anyone involved in a software project. So that part is also important, of course. But then there are some people who say, but you're just bad at estimating. You should estimate better. So one should ask the question, can estimates actually be accurate? Well, let's look at some information about this topic. So there's this great talk by J.B. Rainsberg in OrDev 2013. And the talk is called 7 minutes and 23 seconds. And he talks about this concept of accidental complication. And he says that the cost and duration of anything is a product of the essential complication, the core problem that you're trying to solve. Mm-hmm. So, for example, calculating the tax return in the US might be, a very complicated problem that takes a lot of people, a lot of books, a lot of discussion to get right in software, while putting a man on the moon is something that anyone can do alone in a basement, just working with 1960s computers, right? So the essential complication can be very large, but that's the complication that belongs to the product, belongs to the problem that we are trying to solve. But there's another type of complication that is then the cost and duration is the product of essential with accidental complication. Now, accidental complication is what JB calls us not being really very good at our jobs. And that's things like, you're asked to add a user to the database and you go like, well, that's a few hours. That's not going to be a big problem. I'll be able to test it and write the unit test and I'll be done in less than a day. Great. But then a couple of months later, you're doing the same thing. You're adding a user to the database and you go like, well, that's a couple of hours. And then you start looking at the code and you go like, John, why do we have 23 different ways of adding a user to the database? And suddenly, a story that was very easy to deliver, only a couple of hours, turns into the refactoring project from hell. That's what accidental complication is, right? Now, think about this. We talk about story points, right? Story points are supposed to be relative measures of the complication or complexity, cost, duration of something that we're doing. And, adding a user today is the same as adding a user 2 months from now. Or is it? So actually, what I'm saying is, story points are useless at tackling the growth, which is natural, in accidental complication over time. So a story that you estimated a month ago, today might take 5 times more, 2 times more, 100 times more. It depends on the accidental complication, right? So that's a factor that we can't even account for in estimates unless we start estimating the accidental complication itself, and then it kind of defeats the purpose of having an estimate about the problem. But here's the thing. Sometimes accidental complication can be many times bigger, larger, have higher impact than the essential complication. So what we're saying is that it's actually impossible to assess the cost and duration of a task much into the future. Depending on how fast your code base is changing, it might actually be impossible to estimate the cost and duration of a task, couple of weeks, a couple of months into the future because of that growth of accidental complication. Now, this accidental complication is the thing that dominates the problem of software development. And let's go back to the beginning of the talk. JB had a talk at OrDev 2013 that he said the name of the talk is 7 minutes, 23 seconds. Here's the thing. He made this point that I just made much better, of course. So the video is available. Please go and see it. He made this point in exactly 7 minutes and 23 seconds. Why did he do that? Did he estimate the talk? Did he know exactly what he was going to say? No. He just gave himself a time box and he kept it. So really, what we're saying is that you can deliver value in a time box if you restrict yourself to that time box. Of course, that requires that we have good code base, high quality, we can test our software easily and so on. But if we do that, we can always deliver value in a time box. Maybe it's not exactly all the value we want, but it is value and it's delivered in a time box. Now, that's one of the points. Now, let's look at the other point about estimations. Some people take their queues very, very seriously. And in conferences, when I go and do this talk, I ask people, so please put your hands up if you've removed an item from your backlog or tracking system that is 3 months old. And a lot of hands go up. A lot of people have removed items from the backlog that are 3 months old. And then I ask, okay, 6 months. How many of you, keep your hands up, have removed an item from your backlog that was 6 months old? And then, of course, there's a few less hands, but still quite a few. And then I ask 1 year, a few less hands. 2 years, about half of the room is no longer keeping their hands up, but I can go all the way up to 5 years. And some people will still have their hands up. And guess this, I was at a conference once where a guy kept his hand up until I said 7 years. So 6+ years was the age of the item that he removed from the backlog. Now, the product owner comes to you and asks, so John, how long do you think this story will take? And John will say, it's probably going to take 2 weeks. Okay, if we break it down, let's say it's going to take 2 sprints to deliver that, and let's make it a feature because it's no longer a story. Okay, cool. So that means in 4 weeks we'll get this. And then the product owner goes away, and the product owner comes back 7 years later. And he goes to John and said, John, you said 4 weeks. And it's 7 years now. And of course, the answer that John should give is, well, you didn't ask me how long it would spend in the queue, right? And now, how can we accurately estimate anything if, and this is the case in many, many places, we don't measure the time items of work spend in the queues we have in our system, like the backlog, right? So you say this story takes 2 hours. Great, but how long will it spend in the queue? Have you factored that in? When I ask people, and I ask, so how many of you calculate or measure the average lead time for an item? And almost no one does that. But here's the thing, the time an item spends in the queue is normally orders of magnitude larger than the time something spends being worked on. If we don't measure the queues, can we even estimate at all? Is it even possible to estimate? So I have a lot of other data points that we could go through, but I don't know if you guys have any questions coming in. Otherwise, I'll go to the next principle.
Luis?
Well, it certainly did raise some questions or anything, but I would rather take them at the end. I'm taking notes.
Cool.
No, but, I mean, definitely make some good points. But I mean, you also like the time frames or anything are exaggerated. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about scenarios that I think everybody that's worked with software has encountered, right?
So cool.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we can wait and have, once you see everything the where it's going, have the overall view. But we would like to remind our viewers that they could submit their questions.
Yeah.
Right here. This is my high-tech screen sharing device. Here it is. It's a lot better than Vasco's, right?
Absolutely.
So we had to one up the
Okay.
other.
Yeah.
All right. So
over
at
to-
DojoLIVE, folks, if you have any questions, please send them on to Twitter.
Right here. Thank you,
Cool.
Kim.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
Back
Let's
to you,
move on, Vasco. Cool. Point number. Keep going.
Okay, so here's the thing. Still, even though we've looked at all of that evidence that we might not be able to estimate correctly, still some people say it's possible. Okay, but then is it really? Let's look at the evidence. Chaos report. 80% in 2004, 80% of projects late or failed. It gets worse. In 95, they did the breakdown per percentage of delay. 68% of all projects were 51% or more late. That's more than 2/3, 50% or more late. Now, how about this? Chaos Report 2009, average time overrun 63%. Chaos Report 2011, average time overrun 63%. By the way, this is the data I've seen in the surveys I've done with the projects that I've studied. But just in case you don't like the Chaos Report, because there are some people out there who don't, okay, let's look at other data sources. Gartner, survey of project failure in 2012. And by the way, failure means total failure. It's not just late. It didn't deliver any value, right? So here's the thing. Small IT projects, that's 350,000 and less. That's a team for a year. 20% failed. Mid-size IT projects, 25% failed. Large IT projects, 28% failed. Capers-Jones, writing for the Journal of Defense Software Engineers. So this is not amateur talk here, right? He says, of the large systems that are completed in the defense software industry, 66% experience schedule delays and cost overrun. 2/3 delayed and cost overrun. And we all know the joint strike, what is it, the strike jet fighter or whatever it's called that is going on now in the US, which is kind of a black hole of money. Traditional projects, 53% failed or challenged. This is Scott Ambler's project success survey that he does every year. Now, if you think Agile is better, think again, because that's 40% of projects failed or challenged. Yes, it is better, but come on, almost half. That's not really very good. And this is the kicker. This is a McKinsey company in conjunction with the University of Oxford looked at large-scale IT projects, date 2012. And they found out that 17% of large IT projects go so badly that they can threaten the very existence of the company. Wow. That means that almost 1 in 5 projects will almost bankrupt the company. But we're not really good at this, right? Let's just admit that. We're not really good at delivering IT projects. Okay. So there's more data coming. We can sign up. You can sign up at noestimatesbook.com, and there will be reports coming with more data and more sources. But this is kind of sobering data, right? There is no data out there that I've found that would corroborate the idea that we can reliably be good at estimating cost or duration of a software project. And what I mean reliably is that, yes, I've also had projects that were on time. I'm pretty sure that many project managers out there have managed projects that were on time. I'm pretty sure that there are people out there, developers, testers, designers, architects that have worked on projects that were on time. But that was a coincidence because there's a lot of other projects that were not on time. And we need to look at our state as an industry. It's not that I've been in a project that was on time. It's can our industry reliably deliver projects on time? That's really the question. So principle 3 here is believe the data, not the estimates. Now, some people will say, well, but my boss asks me for estimates. Fine. Give the estimates. Don't spend a lot of time arguing. But please use the data you have available. Don't look at the estimates when you need to make decisions because estimates are reliably wrong, right? It's like going to a casino and investing your house in a game where you have a 60% chance of losing. That makes no sense.
You know, they say at the best, estimates are an informed guess, right? An informed guess, because you can tell you can tell based on your experience and what do you work on, what are you an expert on? You can tell how long is it going to take, but you cannot foresee situations or, things outside of your control that are going to affect the length of the project. However, I do have a comment here. Without an estimation or a planning session, how do you know beforehand what are you going to commit to?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. I get that question all the time. So how do you know that this is worth doing, right? That's the question I hear all the time. Like, why would we do project A if we don't know how much it costs? Well, okay, so here's the thing. If you really want to do that, it's a bad idea, but if you really want to do that, make sure you're going to make at least 100% more money from project A than you think you're going to spend, because very likely you will be 63% over budget. That's the average.
Good,
So if you think you're going to make money less than 60% more than what you're investing, you're actually betting to lose.
Yes, correct.
And that's a stupid idea. That's just a stupid idea altogether. So let's be honest here. If you really want to use estimates, look at the data. The data tells you that you're going to be 60% over time and over cost.
Could you please specify that data? Like, what data are you looking at?
Okay. So Chaos Report, average time overrun 63%,
okay.
2009.
The
Chaos
past.
Report 2011, average time overrun 63%.
Okay, gotcha.
And by the way, if we look at the percentage of failures, just make sure that your projects, you can survive 20% of your projects delivering zero value. If you're in large IT projects, make sure you can survive large IT projects in your company 28% delivering zero value, because that's what happens, right? Let's stop pretending that we can be good at project management in software. We just can't. We don't know. As an industry, we still don't know how to be reliably on time. So, and by the way, this is a sobering stat. I mean, look at this. Of the large scale IT projects that they surveyed in 2012, 17% went so badly that they threatened the very existence of the company. Right? And if you're working in a private company, there is such a thing as running out of money. So, going back to the principle, believe the data, not the estimates. But here's the kicker. When we look at what estimation experts, PhDs in estimation, I mean, imagine spending 10 years studying how to do better estimates. Can you imagine a more exciting career? Well, there are people out there who do that, right? And they looked at what good estimation is. And here's what they came up with. In a paper published in '86, referred to by Steve McConnell in Software Estimation, Demystifying the Black Art, good estimation was classified as an approach that would provide estimates that are within 25% of the actual results, 75% of the time. It took me a while to understand this, so let me try to use an analogy here. So you go to the bank, and you have $100,000 to invest, right? You go to the bank and you say, hey, I would like to invest $100,000 with you guys because you are good investors. That's, we're talking about good estimators, so good investors. And the banker turns to you and says, absolutely, we're good investors. And that's why of those $100,000 that you're giving me, in 10 years, I'm going to give you only $25,000 less. And that's with a 75% chance. It might be that I deliver a lot less. So would you make that investment? Would anyone make that investment knowing the odds? 25% loss is a good result. How come? In the business that I worked in, when I developed the ideas behind No Estimates, we were in consumer software business. We had one market, that was Christmas, that delivered 30% of the sales for the whole year. If we were late for Christmas, we could go bankrupt. We didn't have the chance to play around with numbers and pretend we needed the estimates. We had to deliver value on time or face the consequences. So for us, estimates were useless because they were not reliable, right? So that's the real insight, is that estimates can be used only if you can survive the consequences. So if you are to believe Conte, Dunmore, and Shen, who wrote the paper in '86, you use estimates only if you can survive 25% loss of your investment.
That's your handicap.
Average. Yeah, that's your handicap. And that's your average handicap. because it can happen that it goes 100% over budget, 200% over budget. Actually, I don't know if I have that story here, probably not, but I have a graph where I show projects from one of the companies that we studied, and there was one project there on the line that had 250% delay.
Okay. And this is info for like the whole project, right?
Yep.
Because another thing that teams do, or agile teams do, for example, it's planning, but each sprint, right? So it's only for a week, or estimating, sorry, how long is it going to take each sprint. What do you think about those? Like, is that the same?
So when I work with agile teams, I never ask them to estimate. And they say, hey, but shouldn't we estimate the story points for these stories? That's what they normally ask. And I say,
correct.
If you want, go ahead, knock yourselves out, but I don't need it.
Okay, got it.
I looked at your sprints. The past 10 sprints, you delivered between 3 and 5 stories. I know that in this sprint, you'll deliver between 3 and 5 stories. Why should we spend 2 hours arguing how many story points is a story?
Correct. And then, I don't want to use the word because I'm adding to that comment. On the story points as well, you're not really estimating how long is it going to take. You're estimating like the effort compared to another one, right? Is that really such a bad thing to know which one's going to take how much effort? It's not really the time that's going to take.
So here's the thing, like effort is time. And if you ask people, how many points is that, they will ask, okay, but how many hours is a point? So
correct.
People ask that all the time. But the thing is that it is not adding useful information to the decision-making process. The fact that a story is a 2 or a 5 is less important than, can I deliver this story in 5 to 6 days, because I know I can be 100% late. So I don't want to have stories in a sprint of 10 days. I don't want to have stories of 8 days, because that means it will take 2 sprints to deliver, right? So that's what we know from fact. The fact is that we are easily 60% wrong, no matter the size or the scale of the estimate, and very often, although not as often, up to 100 to 200% wrong. So here's the tip. Always make your stories one day. And do you need to estimate to do that? No, you just ask, hey, John, can you deliver this tomorrow? And John goes like, okay, then let's break it down. If you ask John and he says no, you break it down. If you ask John and John is unsure, you break it down. And when John immediately says, yeah, sure, I can do that, then you're done. Then you've broken it down enough and you can now go into development. So another art of software development that we've lost, especially in the Agile community, is this idea that slicing is a good thing. We tried to say, oh, no, we should, no story should be bigger than 8 points or 13 points or whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter. You can always slice things. And why do I say, can you be done by tomorrow? It's very simple. When do you want to know that you're late with something? As quickly as possible. So what's the quicker you can know? Tomorrow. So if tomorrow you know you're late, you can decide to continue that story or break it down further and deliver a thinner slice of that story. That's a choice.
Immediately I like this idea of, yes, I can. Oh, I didn't make it. I'm late. That immediate feedback. But my question is, how do you encourage or be sure that commitment is a transparent and true one? Because, hey, can you do this tomorrow? The human nature is there's that pressure. I should be able to do it tomorrow. Yes, I can. Like, how do you battle that?
So here's the thing. Now, of course, there's people that will be optimistic, and that's impossible to avoid. Shouldn't even try it. You should build a system that survives optimism. So how do you build a system that survives optimism? So John says, I can do it tomorrow. Okay, fine. Then you ask John tomorrow, so John, are you done? It goes like, no, really. I mean, there's this and this and this and this and this and this and this that I need to do. Okay, can we deliver with half of that completed? Right? That's the next question. And now you're actually actively controlling the risk of being much later than a few hours or a few days. And that's where we want to be. We want to be in a place where we're actively controlling the risks we have. And if you hide information in an estimate, and by the way, developers are the best of this, right? Because if I'm a developer and my manager asks me, oh, so how long does this take? Well, it might take 4 days. Then I got 4 days of nobody pissing me off, right? It's like a stress relief, right? Now I can, do whatever, go to Hacker News and be there for 3 days. And then the last day I'll get it done. And this happens all the time. By the way, this is so common. It's nothing to do with software. It's a natural human thing to do. This is so common, it even has a name. It's called the student syndrome. You know the student syndrome? When does a student study for the exam?
The night.
One day before. Yeah. One day before.
So that's the thing. And how can you get to a sustainable pace if you're backloading the work to the end of the estimate? You can't. It's not possible. The only way to get to a sustainable pace is to deliver value to the market, or as close to the market as you can, every single day. That's what sustainable pace is. It's not about backloading everything and then getting all the testers to work as hard as hell for the last 2 days. And if that's not enough, let's get the developers to test. And by the way, the product owner can test as well. And everybody's testing the last 2 days. And of course, they miss most of it anyway, because they haven't had enough time to test. That's just one example. There's a lot of other negative consequences of backloading the work by using estimates.
Okay, cool.
So let me just tell you a quick story and then we're done. Here's what somebody related to me out of an experiment they themselves ran. And the experiment was this. They asked, I'll forecast my release based on story points, and I'll use 1, 3, and 5 story points. Great. Okay, so we've estimated the whole backlog. We have 1, 3, and 5, and now we're projecting this into the future. So what did they do? They looked at the work they had done. That's the blue bars on the graph. And then they looked at the backlog, the amount of work that was left to be done. And they traced 2 lines. And of course, the work done was a faster growth line. So they cross at some point, and that was the release date was on the 20th of October, 2014. So they were using forecast to look at the release date. And using story points, they got to a conclusion that the release date would be around October 20th. Fine. Okay. Let's do some Excel magic and change the estimate. So instead of being 1, 3, and 5, let's now do 1, 2, and 3. And note that the scales are not even relative, right? 1, 3, and 5 is not the same relative distance than 1, 2, and 3.
1 to 3, yeah.
Okay, so what happened when we forecasted? Release date, October 14th. That's 6 days difference, right? From the 20th to the 14th. Wow, 6 days difference with such a big difference in scale. How is that possible? Okay, so here's another one. They went to the same backlog and they removed the estimates by just adding 1 to every story. So every story is now the same size, even if they weren't. Release date, September 29th. So here's the conclusion. All dates are within 3 weeks of each other in a 38 to 42 week project. So that's almost a year project. And the most optimistic estimate and the most pessimistic estimate were between, or forecast were 3 weeks difference from each other. That's a margin of error of 8%. Now, 8% is a hell of a lot better than the 25% error margin that good estimates are supposed to give you, right? And by the way, when you remove the estimates, you don't actually need the estimates because every story is 1. So this data was shared by Bill Hanlon at Microsoft. And in an email exchange with him, he said, at that point, when he did this experiment, at that point, he stopped thinking that estimation was important. And that's really what I'm asking you all to do, is to actually look at the data you already have. Use the data you already have. Do not rely on estimates. And that's really principle number 9. Do not bet your company on poor track record methods. Use methods that have a proven track record. By the way, this is also known as the hope is a bad management strategy principle. So guys, that about wraps it up. I'm just going to put my email on the screen so that you can see email. And if you have questions that we can't tackle today in the next 10 minutes or so, just feel free to contact me. The book is out there for free. If you're listening to this, you can download the book for the next 24 hours. And yeah, just get in touch. There's a lot of work to do to get better methods of being predictable in software.
So for those developers or teams that might want to give this a shot, it's still not clear to me like what the alternative is, or there is no alternative. It's just simply give yourself a deadline and make it happen, or work on day to day. How do you get over that obstacle of the expectations of your client saying, when can I expect this, and estimating and saying, X day? What's then the real life alternative to estimation?
Okay, so there's several alternatives, but let me just share with you the story. This guy that you see on the screen now, that's Sven Ditz of a company. He manages a software development company in Germany called Zeitgeist, and they develop websites for third parties, so clients. And he has a whole video, it's about an hour, explaining how they do that today without estimates.
Okay.
And that's with the book. There's another video by also a CEO of a contractor, software development contractor. They are out of Spain, and they also manage their projects without estimates. There's in the video, in the book package, there's up to 9 videos you can get with people that are actually already doing this and explaining how they do it.
Okay, thank you.
But if you want to take just one takeaway, do the same that Bill did. Right? Just count every story as one. That's it. Measure how many stories you deliver. Count every story. You don't even need to go to one-day stories. You can just use the stories you have right now and just count them all at the same size and do the projection. By the way, you can do that already now with the data you already have from the past sprints. You can compare the future burn down, the projected burn down of the story point version of your backlog and the non-story point version of your backlog, and see how different that is. I published some time ago on Twitter a chart that compared 2 projections, one based on story points, one just counting the number of stories. This is a fairly large project, a couple of years, several teams, and the projection of the no estimates backlog, meaning that every story is just 1 point, it was almost the same as the projection of the backlog that was estimated. Well, there was one difference. The backlog that was estimated probably cost that company a few tens of thousands of dollars minimum to get that estimate done.
And with a smaller risk, a smaller margin than that 60% or so that you had mentioned earlier.
Exactly. Like in this particular example that I shared in the presentation, the error between using story points and not using story points was 8%.
Vasco, and then the whole process that you use, we still call it an agile software development process? And what other sessions or steps have you changed on that agile development process?
So here's what defines agile. Agile has 4 values, 12 principles. There is one value which isn't there, but it's kind of inbuilt in everything else, which is reduce the time to feedback.
Yeah.
And if you reduce the time to feedback, so if you learn fast,
quick iterations,
you always get something out on time. Very simply, if you're doing continuous delivery, your throughput, so the number of stories delivered per unit of time per week or per sprint, is more trustworthy in terms of projecting what you can release than any estimates by experts. The data you have is more reliable. And by the way, if you do it right, the data will tell you when your team has problems. The data will tell you when you're getting to the end of the project. The data will tell you when you're facing quality debt problems. The data is already talking to us We're just not listening to it because we believe we know better than the data, right? That's what expert estimation is about. We know better than the data. If we believe we can deliver 15 stories or whatever, 520 story points in the next month, then we should be able to, right? Well, not so fast. Let's look at what you've delivered last month and the month before. Was it the same amount of points? Maybe it was, and then great. Or maybe it wasn't, in which case, hey, let's look at the data, right? That was principle 3. If you need to give estimates, but don't believe them. Use the data instead.
All right. Sounds good. It sounds really interesting, actually. The other question that I had was, all right, so you have the whole project, right? You work with your team, you define the project and the scope, and you, before it started, you break it down into a lot of stories, just one-day stories, right? Am I getting that right? Okay, so in order to agree to all those one-day stories, you need to talk to your developers. Hey, is this something that, as you said right now?
Yeah,
No?
exactly. So I get that all the time as well. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter because you can't know if a story is one day in advance. Just like, for example, estimating stories that are in the future with story points is a lose-lose proposition because you don't know how big those stories are, right? Like
Correct.
the example that I gave in the presentation by Bill Hanlon, they actually went and estimated the whole backlog. Nobody does that. They did that because they were doing an experiment. So when people say, oh, this project will take 5 months, you ask them, have you broken down all the epics into stories? Are you sure that all of the stuff you have in the backlog is less than 8 points? They'll go like, why would we do that? And you go like, so you can't know then.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So that's the thing. It's like you don't need to know how many stories you have in the backlog. Actually, even if you would know today, tomorrow there will be more stories. That's how software projects go, right? There's always more stuff being added. That's called, in some places, it's called scope creep. In the book, I call it value discovery, because that's what it is. You discover value later in the project. So when do you want to accept changes in the project? The later, the better. Right? We want late changes because that means we understand the project better, we understand value better, and we now know what to deliver. Right. That's what this is all about. And by trying to estimate everything, we're kind of shutting down the doors to changes. We're saying, no, we're going to break all these epics down into stories of 8 points or less. We're sure that's exactly how we're going to implement it, even though that might only happen 3 to 6 months from now. It's not possible. Right? So we're kidding ourselves when we say that we estimate the project. No, we don't. We have no idea, actually. We're taking numbers out of thin air.
Yeah. I guess the question then is, management right now is very used to, or at least that's the metric that they work with, right? This is the estimation, or at least, and so this is the deadline that we set. How do you set a deadline then if there's no estimation process?
It's not true that management is used to estimates. It's true that management in software is used to estimates. But if you go to a manager of a transportation company, he wants to know how many trucks can we get to the destination every week. He doesn't want to know how long does it take for one truck to get there.
Correct.
He wants to know how many trucks can I get there, because that gives him the capacity of transportation that he has. So the question I have for you is, do you know how many stories your teams can reliably deliver? Because if you do, let's assume you do for a second. Then you can say, okay, in 1 month, we will deliver 20 stories. In 2 months, we will deliver around 40 stories. In 3 months, we will deliver around 60 stories. Then there's only one question left. Which 60 stories should we deliver? And the answer to that is going to be dynamic, because you're going to get feedback. You're going to learn about the product, and the 60 stories you can deliver will change, but it will still be around 60, right? So it's no one that manages transportation would ask, how long does one truck take to do 20 kilometers or 200 or 2,000 kilometers? Because that's irrelevant. What matters is how many trucks can I reliably get to the destination per unit of time. That's what matters. Imagine Toyota trying to manage the just-in-time supply of materials to their factories, estimating the exact time every truck takes to go from the port to the factory. Would be complete disaster. They use something that is much better. They use the throughput measure, right? And that's what matters. Throughput is more important. Throughput is for the whole population of stories. It's more important than the time one story takes to deliver.
So to look forward, you need to look backward.
You use the data, right? So like, don't forget that data is only indicative. You still need to use your judgment and your capacity to make decisions, because, you know, if John leaves the team, the speed of the throughput of the team might go up or might go down. What we do know is that it very likely will change.
Yes.
So be aware, John is leaving the team. That will have an impact on the throughput of the team, right? So we can do that, right? We can understand what's going on. And if we use estimates, we totally forget of these things. Like, for example, the number of sick leave days per year in a company that is relatively stable in number of people is actually entirely predictable. Do you know who's going to be sick? No, you don't. Do you know when they are going to be sick? No, you don't. But you do know how many days of sick leave you will have in a company, more or less, in a year.
Nice, nice.
Understood. Well, Vasco, I understand that you have another commitment to be getting to today, and we very much thank you for this food for thought. As you say, it's interesting to be the salmon swimming upstream against the flow, and very good. So definitely a lot to think about. I think part of innovating is to look at things from a different angle, a different perspective, and to really just ask yourself, is this the best way? And just because it's comfortable doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best way to go about doing something. So with that said, I don't know if you have any last closing statement for us, Vasco, before we sign off today.
So meet you on Twitter.
All right.
There you go. No estimate.
Perfect. Well,
Cool.
thank you all. And very soon on the Dojo Live, when you can then again rewatch this video, if so interested, we'll be posting all of the links and ways for you to see this presentation, get a hold of Vasco, check out what he does. And for now, that's it. Dojo Live for today, and we'll be seeing you all next week. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Take
Bye.
care.
It's nice talking to you guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Likewise. Thank you, Luis.